Day here. This is A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love. I'm your host, Tomas Garza, and I've got a really interesting show in store for you today. As you can see from the title of this live stream, our special focus of the day is 5D or psychic powers or abilities. Oh yeah, you knew I couldn't be on this network and talk about spirituality and all kinds of things without making reference to this in the context of A Course in Miracles. So if you're tuning in here for the first time, what I do is I am here daily, almost every day, and it is it's a lot of fun for me because I get to share from my own experience the teachings of this extraordinary spiritual text. It's really a self-study course comprised of 3 different parts. There's a workbook that I'm going through here, and I'm taking Monday off of that, off of our numerical progression through the workbook to do what we call a special focus here. And what I'm doing is I'm focusing on an aspect of life. In other words, an aspect of spirituality, which is being, life, spirit, life, same. And casting it with a lens toward this particular teaching, A Course in Miracles. So welcome, and feel welcome as well to say hello here in the comments. This is streaming live right now on several different channels, including Enlightened World Network's YouTube channel and their Facebook page, as well as my own Facebook page. So welcome wherever you're tuning in from here today. Feel free to say hello. Questions, comments, I love to hear them. If I don't get to your questions and comments here while I'm live, I will get to them later on in the day. So feel welcome to leave them. And if you're catching the replay, say hello as well. And I will make sure I catch your comments, your questions right here. This is a part of a live broadcast that I really love. I really do. So thank you all for joining me. All right. Specifically here in reference to 5D, which I put in quotes for a reason, and psychic powers, which I put in quotes for a reason, I'm referring to a specific section of A Course in Miracles that has a lot to say about this topic. And that is in the Manual for Teachers. So if you have the book in front of you, this is the smallest of the 3 components in terms of page length, but it's packed full of wonderful stuff. And this has 2 sections. One of them is a spiritual Q&A. It's literally a question and answer session. And item 25 here poses the question, are psychic powers desirable? And psychic in quotation marks. All right. Well, there's a lot of talk. Let's preface this discussion here today with just the reality of the world in 2021, which, by the way, doesn't really mean anything. It's just a calendar that a bunch of people made up a couple thousand years ago. But since we're going by it, here we are. And there's been a lot of activity, psychic activity in the world. There's been a lot of what people would call 5th dimension, 5D activity. I'm putting that in quotes because reality, in fact, is multidimensional. And as we're going to see here, these powers can be used for good or ill, of course, just like the internet, right? Anything that we experience can be used for love or fear. It can be used to support love and our own awakening to that, or it can keep us in the dark, asleep, and afraid. So it really depends on how we use all of this. But there's a lot of activity out there. There are a lot of people who are talking about downloads and 5D activities and journeying and all of that. It has proliferated during the pandemic, in my experience. And I will tell you that I have these experiences all the time. I have them all the time. There are periods of time where I sleep very soundly all night long, and then there are periods of time where I am awake, just awake, from about 2 in the morning to 5 in the morning. Sometimes the time varies on that, but during that time frame where I'm awake, receiving information and having experiences. I call them downloads. You can call them whatever you want. You may be experiencing them, and you may know people that are experiencing these. Sometimes they happen for me in broad daylight, and they completely defy all of the Newtonian physical laws, rules of science, all that stuff. So you can call them metaphysical, you can call them 5D, you can call them whatever you want. I'm having them just as much as anybody else. And there are people out there that are advertising this left and right. Of course, they're monetizing on it, or they're attempting to monetize on it. There are people that are claiming that they're special, right? Or they're posing as special, putting themselves out there as special because these things are happening for them, to them, with them, through them seems more appropriate, yes? So the Course talks about this, and it talks about this in a very loving manner, not surprisingly, and in no uncertain terms. Again, not surprisingly, because as you've seen here in the workbook for students, some of these lessons are so succinct that they just floor you. And they're meant to get the ego completely on the run, and sometimes you get startled. Sometimes it feels like you're being smacked, but the real you is the one that wants to be experienced. Yeah, the ego is not who we really are. And the very fact that you're watching this means that you do feel that deep down. I know you do. Otherwise, I mean, there's so much else you could be watching on YouTube. Let's be honest, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. If you want, feel welcome to insert another word for stuff, which I would certainly utter. Starts with an S, by the way. Yeah, I would certainly utter that in a private video, in a private training, but not here. So you can use your vivid imagination. There's a lot of stuff out there. There are a lot of phenomena, and the very fact that you're tuning in here means that you know everything that I'm saying deep down is true. And does it ring true for you? Well, it may ring true for you right now. It may not. So the manual for teachers, question 25, are psychic, and the Course does put psychic in quotation marks, so-called psychic powers desirable. Well, there are no unnatural powers. So let's put it that way. Everything that's happening to people that are experiencing fifth dimension downloads, energetic upgrades, DNA upgrades, you name it, conversations with other beings, with angels, with other guides, anything that wasn't described in your biology textbook in high school, it's all perfectly natural. If you're having these and it freaks you out, and there are people that are legitimately freaked out, they don't know why they're having these experiences. I hope you'll identify yourself, or send me a private message and we can chat further about that, because I've interviewed a lot of people for my podcast, Decide to Transform. I'm also a podcast, in addition to hosting this live stream, I'm a podcast host, and I've interviewed a lot of people that have begun having these experiences, and they don't have a framework. They don't have a context in which to place it, to normalize it. So if that's you, definitely please reach out to me or anyone else here. There are a number of people here on Enlightened World Network that have these experiences, as I do, as just a part of living, breathing, everyday life. It's quite common, and rest assured that there are no unnatural powers. The manual says this, and it's true. Everything that's happening is perfectly normal and according to divine plan. Rest assured in that, even if it freaks you out at the time. And if it doesn't freak you out, great. Yeah. Remember that none of these experiences make us special, and it's nothing compared to complete spiritual awakening. It's nothing compared to the recognition, the realization of who we really are, which goes by a lot of different words. It goes by the word enlightenment, the term awakening, spiritual awakening, ascension, whatever language you want to use, right? People get hung up on language and terms unnecessarily. So, whatever term you use, there's nothing that is as wonderful as remembering who you really are. And that's what we're all headed for, one way or another, like it or not, no matter how long you may choose to delay this awakening, and you may want this right away. And I suspect some of you do. So there's nothing unnatural about any of these experiences you're having. They're simply experiences that we have along the path. What does this mean? Well, it means that you've released some of the limitations, some of the burdens and restrictions that you've placed upon your mind. It's very clear, it should be very clear that the world's channels of communication are extremely limited, including the internet, extremely limited, right? It's a world channel of communication. It's beautiful, and it enables us to have multiple conversations with people all across the world, like this one we're having right now. So, yes, I'm very grateful for it. I think we're all very grateful for 21st century technology. But the fact remains that the world's communication devices and mechanisms are extremely limited. The internet's beautiful, unless it doesn't work. Wi-Fi is a wonderful thing until the router dies. There are more channels of communication than the world recognizes. And the fact that if you're having 5D or metaphysical psychic experiences, that means that you're releasing some of these barriers and clouds in your mind, which is a wonderful thing. Remember that everything that's happening, whatever this looks like for you, is perfectly natural. And here's an important thing that the Course tells us, and we need this recognition, especially in today's hyper-commercialized world, don't we? Where we sometimes can struggle, and I do mean struggle, to find authenticity. There's nothing special about you. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that exciting? There's nothing special about you just because you're having these experiences. There's nothing special about me because I'm having these experiences, and I'm having them all of the time. But except for special occasions like this one, you don't see me talking about it and advertising it. Why? It doesn't make me special that I have these experiences. And I don't even need to go into the detail of them. It's enough to know that I'm definitely having them. So the question then becomes for you, if you're having them as well, how do you use it? We have a choice here, don't we? There's a theme of this entire live stream. In fact, it's a theme of A Course in Miracles. So as one who's teaching A Course in Miracles, of course, I'm going to teach exactly what the Holy Spirit tells me to say, including right now in this moment. And that is, it matters how you use these. There's nothing unnatural about these psychic 5D, 30D, whatever, D metaphysical abilities that you have. There's nothing unnatural about it, and there's nothing special about it. It doesn't make you special, doesn't make any of us, including myself, better than anyone else just because we're having them. Everyone is capable of these, guys. I mean, people do call these things a gift. Well, in a certain sense, they are, but they're only a gift if you put them to the correct use, and that is in the service of love. In Course in Miracles terminology, you give these experiences over to your teacher. In other words, the Holy Spirit, the voice for God, Jesus, the universal inspiration. You give these over to your guide or guides. You give them over to the service of love, not the service of the ego. That's a very important distinction. And the fact that you're having these at all means you've made some progress along the path. But if you're tempted to use these to put yourself on a pedestal, to say, or to suggest that you're better than someone else, more special, more gifted, if you're using this to support and augment the ego, then I invite you to check that right now. I check it at the door. This is a way that the ego can creep back into your mind and your thought system. If you're not attached to the worldly channels of communication, if you're losing some attachment to the things of this world in your mind, that's great. The ego will try and do anything to remain a part of your mind, of your world. And it will use psychic abilities. It will use 5D experiences if you allow it to. And if you don't allow it to, then these are very powerful teaching devices. I will say this, they're very powerful when placed in the right hands, in the service of love. These are very powerful. Why you show up really, really, really differently. So the person that you see talking to you right now is absolutely not the same person that would have been talking to you 2 years ago. A large part of that is what I have experienced and what I have learned through these 5D, 27D, whatever you want to call it, through these experiences. It's a lot. So if you use them appropriately, in other words, in the service of love, you will show up differently. And people will notice. You're showing up as love, how can they not respond with love, right? None of us has, and this is something the Course tells us here in the manual, none of us has any powers that other people are not capable of developing as well. So because I'm having these experiences, I'm not better than anyone else at all. They're just things that are happening right now in this period of time for me, through me, right? To me. Yes, they're a gift, but no, it does not make me special. So if you're having these experiences, I invite you to check that ego at the door. I'm being real honest with you here. And yes, we all need to make ourselves visible, especially if we're entrepreneurs, as I am, in the commercial world, in the online realm. We need to make ourselves visible. But are we using these abilities in the service of love? And if you are, I'm glad that you're doing that. If you're not, and you know you're not, then this is an opportunity to give them over to your guide or guides. In fact, there are really no plural guides because there is only oneness. But if you have more than one guide right now on your team, give these experiences and powers over to them and ask what should be done with them, and you'll be directed. So it all matters how we use these. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing unnatural about them. And what this looks like for you as you begin to release some of the hold that the ego has on your mind, what these will look like for you, I can't say. None of us can say because it looks differently for all of us. We're each given experiences and teaching lessons that are exclusively for us. They're opportunities for us to use everything that comes into the path in the service of love. I mean, in Buddhism, it's taking it all into the path. You may have heard that term if you're a student of Buddhism. Yeah, bring it all into the path. In other words, use it in the service of love, not the ego. And that is the way to handle all of these psychic or 5D or 30D powers, abilities, gifts. I mean, name it what you want to name it. As long as you're using it in the service of love, that's fantastic. Now, that does mean you can, if you're using these to monetize, if it's in the service of love, monetize. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with that. The question is, are we using this to augment our ego? And you know if you are, why? Because you're in tune with your own feelings and your intuition on this, or you wouldn't be paying attention at all to Enlightened World Network, right? So this is a really easy thing for us to attune ourselves to if we want to, if we decide to do it. All right, so I'm happy to take any questions or comments here, and I will bring up the live stream right here on Enlightened World Network. Thank you all for joining me here. And if you're catching me on the replay, feel welcome to give a shout out, because I do check these comments throughout the day. All right, so, and we've got a lot of people on today. Kimberly, hi, how are you? And Stephanie, hi, good morning. All right, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying this conversation. And Kimberly, you have a very wonderful question here. I'd like to read this on the air. Kimberly asks, how do you get connected to your guidance? I've never known any other than God and Jesus Christ. That's all you need. So the course is dictated by Jesus to Helen Schucman and William Thetford back in the late 60s, 1970s. It was dictated by a voice that they later just called the Voice, which later identified itself as Jesus. This is divinely inspired material. If that's your guide, absolutely perfect. And there are people that take A Course in Miracles, that study A Course in Miracles with Jesus as their guide, as their teacher. Absolutely perfect. Yeah. And there is nothing other than God. I mean, you don't have to be a Christian, obviously, to do this. That uses Christian terminology. I mean, it was dictated in New York City in the 20th century. So, the United States has a lot of people that are professed Christians, of course. And then this is where the course stemmed from. It uses terminology from Christianity, but it also uses terms from the Eastern philosophy and Buddhism, such as the ego. It's universal spirituality. So if you know who your guides are, fantastic. That's beautiful. All right. And thank you for the comment and for tuning in. I'm glad you asked that, because I know a lot of people need to hear that. I mean, a lot of people may have the impression that you have to have archangels as guides, and some people do, some don't. And you don't have to. Each of us has our own inner teacher. That's what's so beautiful about A Course in Miracles to me, is it's universal in theme and application. And my job as a teacher is to help everyone and inspire everyone to get in touch with their own inner teacher, whoever, whatever, wherever this may be. Yeah. So if you're in touch with your inner teacher, that's all you need. I love it. All right. And you're most welcome for the guidance on that. Yeah. And if any of you are watching this and you feel like you don't know who your guides are, that's perfectly okay as well. This is a question that's valuable. It's a question that's worth holding and putting out there, and just having it in the field, so to speak, in your field of thought, in your mind stream, in your flow of consciousness. Because if you're looking for a guide or a spiritual home, so to speak, a set of teachings that resonates with you, we're all very fortunate here in the 21st century, because the entire array of world spirituality is available to us at the click of a mouse. Quite honestly, everything. We can find out information online about everything. And from there, we listen to our own intuition, our own guidance as to what we should do. It's a beautiful thing. So this is really wonderful. All right, guys. So thank you so much. If you're catching me on the replay, feel welcome to leave questions and comments and to say hello here. I'll be checking the comments here throughout the day. And we'll be back here tomorrow on the live stream, going back into some review lessons, very poignant, very powerful and very uplifting review lessons from the workbook for students. So if you have questions about 5D, psychic, I don't know, powers, gifts, abilities, experiences, things, doesn't really matter what word we use for them, feel free to ask. And yeah, they're perfectly natural. Just use them in the service of love rather than to make yourself grandiose and augment the ego. Right? That is the decision that we each make moment to moment. All right, so you know the way I would counsel you to go. And if your inner teacher counsels you to do the same, fantastic. Love it. All right, thank you all for joining me. We'll see you here again.